Okay, when was the last time you thought to yourself, whoa, hey, there's a Prelude. That's a really nice Prelude. I should take my phone out, take a picture, get it printed as a poster, put it on my wall, you know, dream car stuff. Let's be honest, that never happens. And before you come at me with pitchforks because you have a low mileage Prelude with underglow and a pod filter, let's just pause for a moment for a number of reasons, okay? First off, it's in the name, okay? Prelude. It is a great introduction if you want to learn driving dynamics. I can't honestly think of a car, a budget coupe, that's better at teaching driving dynamics than pretty much any generation of the Prelude. Number two, it's not an Integra. I hate to say it, it never will be. No matter how quickly you remove your rear seats, you lighten it up, it will never be that. And number three, maybe, just maybe, it doesn't get the praise and admiration as an icon that it might actually deserve. Let's find out why. '88 Honda Prelude. Why do we care? Why should we care? Maybe you don't care about Preludes. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. As you may have soaked in from the intro, I am not the biggest Prelude fan. I would never go out of my way to buy a Prelude, to look at a Prelude, to drive a Prelude, except for this one. Until right now, and I really don't mean to sound harsh, it's just not my personal preference. First off, they're front wheel drive. Second, especially the later ones, they're known to be heavy, and if you don't do extensive modifications to them, unless it's like Jonah's car that we'll be featuring on the channel soon, unless you do like an engine swap to a later VTEC motor, then they're not the peppy sports car that I want. But when we go back to 1988 right here, with the Pre-Vtec Prelude, a third-gen Prelude, 2-liter fuel-injected engine here, 135 horsepower. The number one thing, as the owner of this car, Dane, will talk about as well later in the video, four-wheel steering. The Honda Prelude was the first mass production vehicle to offer four-wheel steering in North America. That's just a fact. Now, you might be screaming at me, Marcus, Hicus? Okay, well, Nissan has Hicus, of course. That is the most comparable system. That was not offered in North America until much later.
Hey guys, my name is Dane, and this is my 1988 Honda Prelude, and I'm gonna tell you a little bit about it. So, some of my favorite parts on the car would have to be right here. The rear wheel steering, can't beat that. It's a fully mechanical system that connects to the steering rack. It's on all the time. It turns with and against the front wheels, and it makes for a really interesting driving experience. No, the amount of times like hill parking that I've gotten, dude, you need an alignment. It's funny. Next up, I would honestly have to say is gonna be just the front end. I love how this thing looks. It's sporty and unique, but I don't think it's too much. I think it fits what the car is. This is actually my first car. I saw one on Facebook Marketplace when I just gotten my learners and I was looking for a first car, and I saw like a white one, and I fell in love with it at first sight, and then I didn't get that one, and there were a few that I tried to get and fell through, and then my girlfriend actually found this one for me. Some guy, the original owner of this, was selling it out of his garage. So we went over and bought it. It was garage kept weekend car since '88. And yeah, I've loved it ever since. I've owned it since September 2021. It's been a great car to me, never let me down.
Of course, the Nissan Skyline, the R31, was actually fitted with Hicus back in 1986, a couple of years before this, but big differences there, okay? So Hicus at the time was not actually what you think of when you think of a traditional four-wheel steering setup. Now, in modern cars and with later Hicus cars like the R34 GTR, what would happen is at lower speeds, the wheels would turn opposite of the front wheels as to provide a tighter turning radius, better rotation, and a reduction of oversteer on throttle. And then at higher speeds, they would turn with the front wheels to provide better stability at high speeds, changing lanes, etc., right? That's not what the R31 Skyline Hicus did, if you guys didn't know. It basically, what it did is there were electronically controlled hydraulic actuators on the rear subframe bushings that compressed the bushings to basically just dial in like half a degree of toe to reduce unwanted toe movements under power in a corner. These early systems were basically just a fix to really refine the handling of the vehicle and not necessarily to make it quicker, faster, just to make it smoother and more predictable and safer. Let's see what the Prelude's about. First off, amazing visibility. Red line's just before 7,000 RPM. Great view out of the hood, to be honest. This hood, I hate to say it, especially in this red, this is going to be an awful comparison. It reminds me of something like a Testarossa or a 512 TR or a 348, something of that era where the hood actually indents basically down a little bit and there's little grooves there. Oh, wow, 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 wow. Yeah, now I'm feeling the rear steer. On that corner, lots of steering input, the rear end kind of trailed behind me. Great view out of the hood. Styling wise, it kind of looks like an Integra, but very distinctly just 80s Japan. Turning radius. Oh, wow, yeah. Money. Amazing turning radius. A little bit of rev hang too, that's kind of odd. I don't know how I feel about that. So this one's not stock, of course. It's got aftermarket 5-spoke wheels. It's got a 2.5-inch exhaust on it, a little bit of drone, little bit of gearbox slop, a little bit of dead on center. Now, all right, let's dive in. We got 205s all the way around, not like we need a lot of grip. It's just smooth. It's actually incredibly predictable. Trying to be light on the gearbox. There's a little bit of a second gear grind, so we'll double clutch. So the Prelude's 4-wheel steering is really funny. When you look under the car, it looks like it has a rear differential. It looks like it's an all-wheel drive Prelude, and of course it did add weight, so it kind of slowed the car down. But how this works, it's an actual mechanical system, and they ditched it so quickly. Within a few years, they had ditched this on the next generation Prelude and gone with an electronic hydraulic system. Effectively here, the steering rack in the front is physically attached to a planetary gear set in the rear, and that thing that looks like a differential, in which case then it adjusts the steering angle simply based on steering input. There are no speed sensors here for the rear wheel steering. There is no fancy magic going on. So at low speeds, the wheels will move with the front wheels, doing a little bit of a crab walk, something that Hicus is known for. That's one of the big reasons why people lock them out, especially if you're wanting to drift. When you input a lot of steering angle, then they turn the opposite, and then that's when you get back there on that hairpin. Yeah, you feel right away a huge rotation from the rear. It's a little bit unexpected. It didn't throw me off. The rear end has a little bit of a mind of its own.
I use it just for daily driving, ripping around on the weekend, that kind of thing. I do have a pretty interesting build coming up. I have the same engine that's already in this, just a different one that's been fully built and boosted, tuned on Honda S300 with about 14 pounds of boost. And in the coming weeks, I'm going to be throwing that in here, so I'll make it a bit faster, obviously. So originally I wanted to keep it really OEM plus, and I think I'm still kind of doing that because most people just engine swap them, but I'm keeping the original motor. And to me, that was kind of important because I like just the feel of the original motor, the sound of it, all that sort of thing. So I didn't really feel like swapping to an H series, which the majority of 3rd gen owners do when they want power. Finding parts has been, it's been really interesting because everything aftermarket for these cars was discontinued in like the late 90s, early 2000s. So trying to find any of that stuff nowadays can be a real pain. And you end up having to retrofit a lot of stuff from different cars onto it and just kind of like making it work. Like I have a cold air intake from a B18B that just so happened to line up right. Like my exhaust, is a true Benz, and they have to custom make it for me. OEM parts for me have been pretty easy to find, just like small replacement stuff. I haven't had anything major break on me yet.
Wow, at low speeds, the boosting of the power steering is way, I mean, they went overboard on that. Doesn't even feel like it has steering at low speeds. A little bit dead on center, but when you dive into it, a little bit of the feel comes out. Drive it with intention, drive it with finesse. That's what this car begs of you. And the owner of this car, Dane, put it perfectly. He said, this car is good at a lot of things. It's just not particularly amazing at any one given thing. And you look around, you're like, oh, that's cool. Wow, it has that. It has adjustable side bolsters here. It has all of these things, power everything, sunroof, windows, but it's just not perfect at anything. The four-wheel steering lacks refinement, although it does feel cool. It absolutely does feel like this car should not handle the way it handles. It doesn't feel like a factory EG. It feels quite a bit more sophisticated. The brakes are not inspiring. They have typical 80s Honda feel. It's like from 20% throttle to 100% throttle, there's not much difference in torque and power. It's kind of all or nothing. You do get some cool intake sounds though. That steering is ridiculous. On a hairpin, I've never felt anything like that. Never felt anything like that. Probably the four-wheel steering system that I've driven that you can feel the most. Absolutely. Wow.
It's really interesting because it's hard to put into words. It's more something you have to just feel, but the rear wheel steering makes it so even though it's a front wheel drive car, you still feel something happening in the rear, and it's really interesting. Like the car kind of goes where you want it to go, right? It feels, I would almost describe at low speeds especially, the rear end feels really floaty. It just kind of just moves a lot more than you'd expect it to compared to any other car. I think especially lowered, it's on some nice Falcon tires too. It handles great. I would not want any other car to take on like a mountain road or something like that. It's just a joy to drive. It's a blast. Yeah, honestly, most people are worried about the four-wheel steering system being unreliable, but it's a sealed gearbox, so you never have to fill it with fluid or anything. It's not electronic. It's sealed, it's put together, and it just does what it was meant to do. I would say it's pretty hard to break one of these.
And of course, later on, the Integra and the S2000 ended up kind of effectively killing this car, killing the Prelude. After a while, nobody wants, I'll tell you guys straight up, nobody wants a front-wheel drive Grand Touring car. Nobody wants that. You know, this is so out of context from the 80s. This car was built before I was born, but even still, even today, nobody wants a front-wheel drive touring car. We want all-wheel drive, or we want a rear-wheel drive fun coupe. And the Integra was that fun coupe. What a cool piece of history, though. While it was a good first effort here, this is a very primitive test, and we could consider it a beta. And as a first car, Dane, as a first car, you have knocked it out of the park, okay? Thanks guys for watching. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Subscribe if you haven't already. And yeah, that's about it. If you haven't checked out roadsuntraveled.com in a long time, or if you're new to the channel, we do have an entire collection of jet tags up there, a bunch of Japanese engines, American engines, and stuff like that. You can find everything Roads Untraveled on the site. Check it out. We'll see you guys soon.